China is thriving geopolitically, the new global kingpin, a true superpower, broker of peace, advancing in defense industries, challenging US dominance, dominating trade routes, exporting to half the planet, exploring the sky. Sounds flawless, right? And why not? After Trump assumed office, China suddenly started looking like a very convincing candidate for global superpower status. But what if it's all smoke and mirrors? On the surface, China looks unstoppable. Diplomacy, dominance, development, all in one neat package. But scratch the surface, and what do you find? Cracks. The economy is faltering, citizens are frustrated, internal unrest is simmering, censorship and its global reputation is taking a serious hit. And they're getting wider. Today, we're going to look at what China really is. What's actually festering behind the polished posters? After 60 years of shouting, building, and controlling everything in sight, has it really built strength, or is it just a towering statue? Flashy on the outside, but full of cracks underneath? Is China really sanction-proof? Can it actually survive a war? Will it stand its ground, or collapse under the weight of its own lies? Let's find out. Just like a sponge is bulletproof, just like bragging about being waterproof while standing in a leaky boat holding a hole saw. Look, China loves to flex. Biggest factories, fastest trains, longest bridges. But all that steel doesn't mean you're ready for steel rain. See, picking a fight isn't the problem. But first, check your strength. How much heat can you actually handle? Because otherwise, you're not taking a stand. You're signing up for a beating in HD, broadcast live with commentary, memes, and a global audience asking, "Bro, what was the plan again?" This isn't about looking like a superpower. It's about being smart. Take Russia. It didn't just wake up and shout, "Let's fight the West." It watched, waited, tested the waters with Crimea, got sanctioned, shrugged it off. That was the training arc. While everyone else was busy tweeting, Russia was building a sanctions-proof economy, preparing for round two. As of 2023, Russia didn't just swallow 28,000 sanctions. It digested them, turned them into muscle, and went back to the gym. It became the most sanctioned country in the world, ahead of Iran and North Korea. Russia knew the stakes. The West played checkers. And Ukraine? Sadly, it became the board. Back to China. Sure, it flexes economic muscle, churns out mega projects, and boasts about a self-reliant tech industry. But tug one thread in the global supply chain and suddenly, poof, factories pause. Markets panic. Xi Jinping calls an emergency meeting. China's economy rests on four pillars: exports, foreign technology, and access to global markets and SWIFT-based banking. Take away even one, and the whole machine starts coughing. That's not resilience. That's dependency dressed as dominance. Geographically, most of China's key cities and industries are concentrated far from open ocean. Technically not landlocked, but strategically, it may as well be. China does have a long coastline, especially along the East and South China Seas, so it's not landlocked like Central Asian nations. But it's so boxed in by rivals and choke points that it might as well be stuck inland when things get serious. Mainly because the first island chain, Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, can easily block Chinese naval and trade routes in wartime. The South China Sea is a geopolitical minefield, contested by many countries. The Malacca Strait, a narrow choke point near Singapore, is China's oil and trade lifeline, and it can be easily blocked by adversaries like the US Navy. China also doesn't have great relationships with its neighbors. In fact, it's juggling feuds with 18 of them. Let's run through a few favorites. India? They've been locked in Himalayan tension since 1962. Aksai Chin, Arunachal Pradesh, and two egos too big for the mountains. Japan? Senkaku Islands, or as China calls them, definitely ours. The Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia? Just trying to turn the South China Sea into a private lake with the legendary 9-dash line. Vietnam? They've got their own bitter history and no love for Beijing's ambitions. Taiwan? Any day now, if you believe Beijing. They've been hyping it like it's just one smooth boat ride away. Meanwhile, the US, Europe, and every navy with fuel are watching like, please, try it. Because shouting reunification is easy, actually doing it without getting torched? Not so much. China talks aggressively, sure, but it knows it faces severe logistical and strategic hurdles. It also knows an invasion could trigger a global military and economic response it's not ready to handle. So instead, it keeps poking Taiwan with jets, ships, cyber attacks, while flooding the airwaves with reunification propaganda, hoping repetition will do what capability can't. China likes to project strength, economically, politically, and militarily. State media paints a picture of a self-reliant superpower, immune to Western pressure. Sanctions-proof. They say, "We have our own systems, we don't need the West." Sounds bold, but let's look under the hood. China controls around 70 to 80% of global rare earth processing. Most of the tech we use, from smartphones and electric cars to wind turbines and fighter jets, needs rare earth materials, and China is the one refining them. The United States and Europe have heavily depended on China for rare earth processing, and that gives it serious power over the world's green energy and high-tech industries. But in the event of war, that leverage becomes dead weight. Why? Because rare earths only matter if you can export them. In war, trade dies, and with it, the leverage, because minerals don't move, factories don't run, and buyers don't shop. You can't weaponize rare earths if your ports are blockaded and your customers are cutting ties. For example, Russia's energy exports became harder to weaponize once Europe found alternative suppliers and imposed sanctions after the Ukraine invasion. Nothing's free in global politics, but loyalty still counts, and China's got plenty of clients, not allies. It plays the debt trap diplomacy game, funding shiny infrastructure in vulnerable countries and expecting loyalty or leverage in return. But in a global conflict, those assets abroad, at best, unreachable, at worst, seized, blocked, or flat out useless. You can't collect debt when you're locked out of the global banking system you still depend on, including SWIFT. And those countries, they know they're trapped. They're not thrilled about it. They won't back China in a war, and often vote against it in global forums. Quietly, they're all trying to diversify away from Beijing's grip. Even friendly nations like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Laos are drowning in Chinese debt. And that doesn't exactly breed loyalty. Meanwhile, Russia. It may be isolated, but it still commands real loyalty, or at least real action. Despite sanctions, Iran sends drones. North Korea ships munitions. China keeps trade flowing. They're not doing it for free, but they're doing it. And in geopolitics, action beats statements every time. Supply chain shift. Apple, Tesla, and other companies are moving factories to India, Vietnam, Mexico. Tech restrictions. The US and its allies have banned the export of advanced chips and semiconductor equipment to China. ASML, a Dutch company, can no longer ship its critical lithography machines to China, machines that are essential for creating these advanced chips. Without them, China is unable to easily produce the high-end semiconductors needed for everything from AI and military technology to cutting-edge consumer electronics. Decoupling or de-risking. It's happening. Not total separation, but critical sectors are being pulled away from China. Youth unemployment. In 2023, it hit over 21%. Local governments have over $9 trillion in hidden debt from infrastructure projects. Foreign investment into China dropped to a 30-year low in 2023. Exports down. US and EU import less from China now, and friends whoring is becoming real. Economic risks are high and deeply structural. China's demographic time bomb is real and accelerating. China's population declined for the first time in over 60 years in 2022. In 2023, it dropped even more. Birth rate. The fertility rate is 1.09, well below the replacement level of 2.1. Aging. By 2050, over 30% of China's population will be over 65 or older. So, Is China literally about to collapse? Not overnight. But it's dealing with long-term rot that could eventually eat away at its foundation. Think slow-motion implosion, not sudden collapse. These interconnected economic and demographic issues suggest a gradual erosion of its foundational strengths. And now, let's talk about the other war China's already fighting, the war for its image. China faces global criticism for a whole list of dystopian moves, and honestly, for good reason. Designer babies, mass surveillance, re-education camps, rogue experiments, COVID cover-ups, and yet China keeps pushing forward, barreling ahead like none of it matters. Take Dr. He Jiankui, for example, the Chinese scientist who used a tool called CRISPR to edit the genes of human embryos. His goal was to make the babies resistant to HIV. But the case raised big questions about whether it's okay to change human DNA, especially in a way that affects future generations. The global scientific community was shocked. It was a blatant violation of international ethics. But in China, barely a slap on the wrist. And that's just what made headlines. Behind the scenes, there are reports of underground genetic experiments with zero oversight, no accountability, no transparency. Now imagine this: if one of those experiments goes wrong and leaks out of a lab, it won't be another COVID. It could be far worse. A bioweapon-level genetic threat that doesn't just spread, it wipes out. Quietly, efficiently. No need for nuclear weapons when your lab can cook up extinction. Inside China, it's Orwell meets Black Mirror, starring Xi Jinping. Facial recognition, AI surveillance, and a social credit system where jaywalking or tweeting the wrong thing can cost you your job, your passport, even your bank account. No trial, no appeal, just algorithmic exile. Then there's Xinjiang, where being Muslim means mass internment, forced labor, and, according to some reports, forced sterilization. Not dystopia, reality. And free speech? Ask Hong Kong. 1 minute, democracy protests. Next minute, national security law drops and boom. Activists jailed, journalists vanished, and Beijing's message is clear. Speak out, disappear. China is engaging in actions that seem controlling, unfair, and harmful to humans, and it knows the consequences. So it's still learning how to survive, studying Russia's methods of evading Western sanctions. Because China is not sanction-proof, and it's not war-proof either. It's powerful, yes, but it's also vulnerable, isolated, morally discredited, and surrounded.